All right, and welcome to the Business of Speaking show. I am your host, Tim McDonald, and joined by my friend, Rebel Brown. How are you doing?
I'm awesome, Tim. How are you? And I
I'm
know
doing.
you're awesome. We've already talked about it.
Oh, we just had a great little conversation before we went live. But I want to thank you for joining today, and everybody that's watching. Just to let everybody know, and Rebel actually just asked me this, this show is really a show where I was having conversations with a lot of speakers because I was looking to elevate my speaking career and do more of it. And I was learning so much about what they did that I said, this is something that I should be sharing with other people. And so this show is really for anybody that's thinking about getting involved in speaking, anybody who's just starting in speaking, and really anybody that's along the path of becoming a speaker, because we can all learn from each other. We all have different experiences, different backgrounds, different knowledge sets. And so that's really the purpose of this show and these interviews, is to just kind of explore not what you talk about necessarily on stage, but your journey to the stage and what's happened to you since you got on the stage. So
Yeah.
with that, Revel, I would love to just ask you, and I can't wait for this. How did you get started in speaking?
You told me, you warned me you were going to ask me that, which I really appreciate because I would have been, whoa, wait, let me think. I started to tell you, my first speech was when I was 5 years old. And I was in kindergarten, and it was Mrs. Biedenkopf's class. And we had a little play, and I had 7 lines that I had to stand up in front of everybody and say as a speech. And you know what? That's the first time I remember doing that. I am sure I did it before that because my whole life I was the one getting in front of everybody. I know this is really hard for you to believe, Tim, given my shy personality, but I was the kid that was getting up and giving speeches and reciting poems and reciting, all kinds of things. All through grade school, high school, I was the lead in the dramas and the musicals. College, I was doing that work as well as speaking and doing speeches for all my clubs and everything that I did in business. I actually took speaking in college from a professor and did work there. I've been doing it all my life. So when is it? Is it when you start making money at it, or is when you start doing it, right?
So if you were doing it most of your life or your entire life, really,
Right.
um, when was it that you started realizing that this is something that could generate you money?
I was, as I've talked to you about, I have a weird career track because I've been consulting for over 30 years. I've had my own business. And I've been all over the planet. I've run a business in Europe. I've run businesses in the Pacific Rim. I have a really different kind of track. And through it all, it's interesting. I was thinking back, I've always, even with clients, so if I go into a corporate client, let's say, and let's call it the consulting client, because I do workshops and speaking and all that for corporate clients too. But if I go into a corporate client for consulting, it's usually around repositioning them, finding new markets for them, building different products for them. They're in an expansion mode. They've hit a wall and they're looking for new opportunities. And that's where I do a lot of work. I'm up on the platform speaking to their sales teams. I'm at the sales kickoffs. I'm doing executive workshops, right? So if you think about it, that's all speaking, right? That's all a form of speaking. Everybody has this idea that speaking is get up on a big platform and have big lights and, it's the showbiz, it's Vegas, right? That was kind of like not even ever in my thought, although I do it. I like the more private, intimate kind of things where you've got a room full of people that have commonality about their business, their focus, they're in sales, they're whatever. But I love working with the companies and doing workshops and speaking that are tuned to them. I'm one of those people, there's this whole debate in speaking about, do you always say the same, do you have the same 3 speeches, 5 speeches, whatever, and it's the same word repeated every time? Or is everything different? I'm the everything is different girl. The idea that any speech of mine would be the same between 2 clients is kind of silly because I'm going to tune it to move into whatever the client wants, right? So I started making money speaking when I first started my own consulting business because they had me up on the stage speaking and it was part of my offer, right? Um, I would say when I really stepped into starting to do more speaking to drive business and opportunity, which is what you're asking about, was when I started my third career, right? First one was in corporations doing sales and marketing. Second one was consulting all over the planet and doing that. Third one was when I went out on my journey on neuroscience, right? Back when I decided I had some, I don't know if you remember, but I had memories come up of my father and his mother torturing me as a child. And it knocked me down to the point that by the time I went through the therapy in the US, I was powerless and couldn't get out of my house. I couldn't get up. I went from being, rebel rouser to rebel home. And I knew I had to find an answer. So I started looking at what makes the human mind tick. And I traveled all over the planet and I studied a lot of things. I studied neuroscience, and science, but I studied a lot of the other alternatives, which, the ancient alchemists knew more about our mind and how we create than we do still to this day. So that was when I really decided I wanted to build a business around not necessarily speaking, but about sharing that story and sharing the lessons I learned. Because what I learned, saved my life and took me from being powerless to being better than I've ever been, right? But it also made me feel like I was a story I was supposed to share. So for me, the speaking is about sharing that, hey, everybody looks at me, so many people look at me and go, God, you're nothing but energy. And, you just go, go, go. And it's been easy. It's been anything but easy, right? It's been really hard. And when that happened, how many people have that in their life? They have some kind of trauma. They have some kind of horrid things that really hold them down. And what I learned with the mind, with all my mind work, was how to not let that keep you down and how to take control of your world, regardless of what's happened to you. So for me, the business of speaking is not really the business of speaking. It's about sharing what I learned and the techniques I learned that saved me and put me into such a great position with other people who want to hear that, who need that. And you know what? Right now, we're kind of in a position where, you don't know how many of my corporate clients, as well as my coaching clients, look at me and go, what do I do with this anxiety? Right? I don't know what to do. I'm literally deer in the headlights stuck. And I think a lot of us are, because of the way our brain responds to all this threat situation, right? So to me, it's sharing what I know, and the people, and I just had a big aha, sharing what I know. And if people don't want it, that's fine, right? If people aren't ready and I have to drag them kicking and screaming, bye-bye, because there's plenty of people out there that want the knowledge and the expertise. And yeah, there's some and speaking has a lot of different angles. There's the motivational speakers, and then there's the content speakers. And I'd say I'm more content with a little bit of motivation because of my subject matter. But I don't go out there to just speak and entertain. I go out there to share important things that I think everybody ought to know to make their lives better, make their businesses better. And I don't know if that answers your questions, because I told you let me go, off I go, right?
No, I love it.
I go.
But you did say something interesting, because, this is something that I hope you can expand on a little bit. This was your kind of third career, right?
Yeah.
And
fourth, maybe,
well, whatever the number was, right? When you made this change and transition, how did, you actually get people to know that this is what you were now sharing and talking about?
You know what? I haven't. It's been 10 years. I still have a lot of people out there who know me. I started in marketing and sales, right? So a lot of people, you remember back when we first met on social media, which was a long time ago, right? I was still doing marketing and sales, right? And then I started doing more turnarounds and strategy and different, when you have 300 corporate clients, you do a lot of different things, right? And then I moved into the neuroscience, right? So I have people that have known me for 25 years that still think I do marketing, which I do. But when I tell them about the speaking, and they look at me and go, I never knew you did that. And I've known me this whole time, but it's because of what I talk about in our minds. We get what we pay attention to and focus on is what we expect. So people that knew me when I was just doing marketing kinds of things focused on my and paid attention to my marketing career. And now they expect that of me. And anything new that's come in, their mind hasn't really taken in because there's that expectation of that's who Rebel is. That's what she does. Right. And I think that's one of the challenges for a lot of, especially those of us, like you and me and the people we know in this business. We don't stay, some people stay stagnant and have the same kind of content, right? Others are moving around and we're exploring and adventuring, right? It's a journey, right? I don't know about you, but if I talk about the same thing for about a year, I get bored. I want to move on. And because I learn so much. And some people do it. And I'm not saying that people don't evolve, but I jump, right? No, it's the rebel thing, right? So I think now, I just built a new website because I got hacked and I decided, okay, I'm going to build a new website. And for the first time, the website's really focused on my theme and my model around mind science rather than around me and consulting and what I've done in my history. Because I have a pretty extraordinary pedigree. I should with that much consulting business, right? But I really built the site around what's the message I want people to get, whether they're corporate leaders, just individuals, around the power of our minds, not around me and what I can do for corporations, because that'll come. I have enough of a tail out there with businesses and with my venture capitalists and people I've worked with through the years. But I decided I needed to feature it more, feature who I am and where I'm going next versus where I've been. And I think a lot of people get a stake in the ground, and you've done this because you've moved, right? You get a stake in the ground, and then it's kind of like you go over here, but that stake stays, and you make sure because you got to have something to hang your hat on, right? You don't want to be lost. I think the trick, and I'm trying this, and I don't know it's right, Tim. So this is what I'm trying. I think you got to make the jump and stop hanging on to that tail, right? I mean, if you look at the About Me at the very bottom of my About page, it talks about my consulting career. The rest of it is really around the mind and so, but how much of that do you do? Because we're all afraid we're going to lose that history and that stream of revenue that comes with it, right? Because you got to pay the bills. I mean, bottom line is you got to pay the bills, especially now. Especially. So it's how much you got to have the guts. I think that's it. You got to have the faith in yourself and the guts to not just dip a toe in the water. I don't think that's the right answer. And that's I tried to straddle the fence, if you will. I dipped my toe and then maybe I got my leg over the fence, but not my whole body. I think you've got to really put a strong stake in the ground for who you are and what you are and now and going forward. And that's the trick to make that happen. And I'll let you know if it happens. I think more, I'll let you know how it is. We'll do this in a year and I'll tell you, oh, that didn't work at all. Don't try it. Or it did, right? You got to experiment. And I think that's the other thing. Everybody's so afraid of making a mistake because we're all taught to focus on what we do wrong, right? Focus. How many times do you pat yourself on the back? Not. How many times do you beat yourself up, right? You got to just try things. And if they don't work, stop and try something else and laugh. Give yourself credit for stepping out and trying something new. And then if it fails, just laugh and go, well, I learned something and move on. But instead, we kind of step out and we try it and we fail and we go, oh, I'll never do that again. And right? That's not the way to do this. That's not the way to do any business. That's not the way to live life, right? We're born to make mistakes. How do you learn? You'll learn from your mistakes. And yet, what do? We beat ourselves up for the mistakes. Welcome to Humanity 101.
Yes. So, I'm kind of curious, I know you have a lot of contacts and you explained how, a lot of the ones that have known you from sales and marketing still think of you that way. So how are you finding and generating new clients for the new focus that you have?
I'm actually using my old clients. I'm using a lot of my old clients. I have, as you can imagine, I've worked for over 300 companies. So I have a long client list. I have a long list of people who I would call mentors because I was lucky enough to drop into the Silicon Valley when I was the first woman in any business, right? I was the first sales rep for my first company. I was the first woman sales rep. I have the cracks on my skull from the glass ceiling. All right. But because of that, I also got the opportunity to work with some amazing people. I mean, I worked with Steve Jobs. I worked with, I can go on and on about visionaries that taught me a lot, but also that mentored me and mentored my business, because I have clients that I've worked with 6 times, because once they found out what I could do, they brought me in. But not only did they bring me into their new companies, they introduced me to other people because of the value. So I just go back to my clientele, and they make introductions for me, or they use me themselves, or they look into their, I work with a lot of CEOs, COOs, executive teams, and ventures and board of directors. They see me and they'll go, I'll give you an interesting story. I was talking to somebody that I was on a board with, God, it had to be 15 years ago. And I was talking to him about what I was doing. And we've been friends for years, since the board, right? We met on the board and we're more friends. And he looked at me and he went, you know what? I know somebody that's on a board of mine that's got a total block about XYZ. And he was talking to me about the other day, and you could help solve that. And lo and behold, I get set up on an executive coaching client, right? Which will then turn into, he's an executive in a company. I'll end up going in there and doing workshops, right? So it's not this idea, you post on social media and rent your social media up and then you're going to get clients. I've never gotten a client from social media in my entire life. Never. Because that's not where my people play, right? A CEO of a tech company or of a large organization isn't going to go on LinkedIn and look for me. It's all word of mouth. So I've built a strong word of mouth business because of my prior work. I have a good reputation, or at least I told I do. You never know, right? So I use that and that network. Now, am I out on social? Absolutely, because I also want to share. I have a couple of private groups on Facebook, and I'm sharing in them all the time because it's my way of sharing, and I'm doing videos and all that. Never show it on social media. It's all in my private groups because I'm helping people, even though they're not my clients. I'm helping them. I'm sharing information. And I think that's what's important about social. I shook my head. I don't know about you, but I've watched people on social media through this interesting time in our country, right? We'll call it that and leave it. Promoting themselves and selling, and in a way that's slanted for COVID or for the fear or whatever. But really, they're still chest thumping for themselves, and they're not sharing information. They're trying to make money, and it's obvious. And I don't think that's the way. I think people are tired of that. I don't know how you feel about that, but I think that me self-promotion is not as effective as it used to be. So I kind of stay away from that, but that's just me. I see good friends of mine who are big speakers out there doing it. So it works for some segment of the community, but I just tend to have a little different. I don't like to self-promote. I never have. I'd rather eat a, what did I say one day? I'd rather eat a gerbil than self-promote. And I like gerbils. I like furry creatures. So basically I'm using my network. I'm using my network, and I'm out on social because I have some pretty good followings. Not like I used to, because I kind of backed out of there for a few years when I didn't feel. I was sick with Lyme disease, chronic Lyme, so I was kind of gone for a while. But I use social, and I do meet new people that way, but the majority comes from my networks.
So if you're looking at really, establishing these relationships and building the people, the referral network and the word of mouth that you have, what are some things that you found work to really, outside of the body of work that you do, are there any other types of things that you kind of implement to make sure that you're staying in touch, you're, providing value for these people so they don't fall off the radar?
Mine tend to fall off and come back on because, and once again, I have a different kind of business model. My clients are CEOs, boards guys. They're not out on social. They're not socializing. They're heads down, and especially right now. So it's not like I reach out to them and go, oh, hey, here's an interesting article. No, they'd call me and go, what is wrong with you? Right? Are you okay? What I do is I just reach out and ping people when not every month, not all the time, but I ping the folks every once in a while. I'll see something. Like I have one of my venture capital guys that I know one of his hobbies, and when I see an article on it that's really cool, I'll shoot it to him and just go, "Hey, dude, you got to check this out because you're gonna just, you know." And he'll write, "Man, thank you, that was so cool." And that's all I do, you know, just little things like that to keep top of mind, because my clientele would think I had gone off the deep end, or they would be like, it would push them away if I promoted myself to them, because they view me as an associate that they've worked with and somebody they call on when they need, not as somebody that I have to sell to them, right? Does that make sense?
Oh,
Because I
absolutely.
end up, you know, because I end up being friends with the 90% of my clients are still friends. And the 10% that aren't, I really didn't want to work for them ever again. I know that clients are all perfect, right? No, right? So they stay friends, and I think that's been one of the things that's been different is. But if you talk to, you know, I talk to other speakers, a lot of them are going back in multiple times, and they're the people that are hiring them are friends that have moved from different company to different company. But most of the folks I talk to are content oriented speakers. They're more, you know, they're adding a lot of value as experts in their industry, in their content. They're not the more abstract speakers that are, I call them, and this is probably the motivational kinds of, you know, where they can go generically to everything with the same kind of body of content. So that may be a difference too.
Yeah. So if you looked at you know, at yourself where you're at now, and you could go back to when you kind of first got started in doing this business speaking, what advice would you give yourself?
Um, you think on that a minute. Number one, just because they make a lot of money and they're big doesn't mean they know what they're doing. AKA, don't automatically assume that the big ticket speakers are who you want to model. I think that was a hard lesson for me, and you probably know what I'm talking about. There's a lot of big ticket speakers in this business that are not necessarily who you want to model from a just, you know, just a perspective of trying to be like somebody else. I think you got to find your own path. And I think I wasted a lot of time getting to know some pretty big speakers and trying to model after them and who they were, and doing things the way it had always been done by those people. And that was a mistake, because this business has transformed. Shoot, it transformed 15 years ago, it's transformed 10 years ago, and it's transforming really rapidly now, right? I mean, 10 years ago, they didn't want the experts and the content speakers. They wanted the entertainer and the motivational, right? Now they want people who are going to teach them, who have the expertise, et cetera. They don't necessarily want it on a platform. They want it in workshops. They want it in small groups. They wanted videos. They want it in a way, it's just transformed. And so I think the mistake I made, not that any of the people I've modeled were bad, right? But I tried to be them. And their model was based on something they'd been doing it for 20 years. Well, guess what? That was the wrong thing for me to do, because the business was changing and they could hang on to it because they had the tail of all those years. I'm new coming in trying to model like them, and it didn't work at all. And once I finally figured that out, which it took me a while, because it takes me, for some reason, I can help other people's businesses like that. My business, I'm not as smart as, right? Shoemaker's kid, right? But once I figured that out, I started realizing I need to look at my audience. I'll give you an example. People convinced me, people being, you know, mentors and people that I trust. When I first started speaking, they convinced me, you know what, your story is so perfect for women, right? Because how many women out there have had some kind of an abusive environment in their lives, whether it's as a child or as an adult or in business or in relationships? You know, most women, when you talk to them, have been abused. They just don't talk about it. And so I spent all this time and I built out a 6-week course, including, well, each week has 6 videos plus content, etc. So, you know, all of this for women. It took a lot of time, and it's a really great course. As a matter of fact, I'm going to regen it and give it away. But I went out to sell it. Nobody wanted it, right? Everybody was building courses. Remember about 5, 7 years ago when everybody was building courses? I built a course because everybody was building a course. I didn't do what I would have always done with a client and said, where's your market? Let's go talk to them. Let's see what they want, see what they're willing to, I did none of that. I followed everybody's advice that was in speaking and built a course. Wrong, right? So I learned, stop listening to the world and follow do what you love. Go find your audience, go ask your audience and the people you want to talk to what they want to hear, and then find out how they want to hear it, and then go find ideas from brilliant people. But don't try to model everything from those people. Build it yourself. So it's the same thing I tell clients. The best thing you find for your business, for ideas, is not in your industry. Go outside your industry, because what other people are doing is different from what you're doing, and you will get more ideas there than you will inside that locked in little circle where everybody's doing the same thing. Same thing with speaking, right? Take pieces, but go talk to the people that you want to talk to and understand what they want. And that's how you build the business. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely. I think that was a perfect way to kind of get close to the end of the show here. So, Rebel, how can people get in touch with you? Where can they find you?
It's so easy. Rebelbrown.com is me. Rebel@rebelbrown.com is me. Rebel E. Brown on Skype is me. Rebel Brown on LinkedIn is me. On Facebook, well, there's a gentleman in Texas named Rebel Brown, and he has Rebel Brown, so I'm Rebel Brown 1. That's the only place I've ever been, and I'm not on Twitter anymore because I just don't do it. That platform got a little too automated for me. So I spend a lot more time where people are.
Yeah, no.
But that's how to find me. And if everybody goes to my site, if you go to my website, to rebelbrown.com, and you click on any of the buttons that say learn about the science of your mind or whatever, I just finished a new guide called The Science of Paying Attention, and it's free and you can download it. And it explains and it gives you 6 ways to change the focus of your attention, to change how you're running your business and how you're looking at your world. So go download that. I will not spam you when you download it. I will not add you to a list. I don't do that. You will ask for your email and your name because I want to know who has it. That's it. Okay.
Oh, perfect. I think that's a fantastic offer. And I want to thank you for joining us today, Rebel.
Thank you. You know me. I love sharing.
And everybody watching, thank you for being part of this. And I want to let you know that even though we're going to stop the YouTube broadcast here, I'm going to stay on with Rebel and ask her one additional question. So this content is not available online anywhere, but if you go over to speaking.business and sign up for the email list over there, our weekly newsletter, this is where you will get that exclusive content. So thank you for joining us on YouTube, and I will see